Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called The Power of Frequency Medicine. Rejuvenate your cells and stimulate your pineal gland to heal your body. My name is Stephen Dynam, the founder and president of the Shift Network. And one of the most exciting explorations we've been doing in recent years is exploring the frontiers of sound healing. I've really come away feeling like this is the future of medicine, of therapy. There's so many implications for how sound can actually heal and align our bodies, awaken our consciousness, open new dimensions of understanding. And we're going to get to spend some time today with one of the world's greatest pioneers. I'll say that. It sounds a little inflated, but I think it's true, particularly in the realm of science and acoustic science. His name is John Stuart Reid. He's an acoustics physics scientist and inventor of the cymoscope. And he's really been at the frontiers of understanding the science behind how sound can heal and elevate and bless us in some really extraordinary ways. And we're going to focus a lot today on the pineal gland. So, John, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm absolutely delighted to be with you, Stephen, and all of you today. And I'm very excited to share in the important subject of healing with sound frequencies, which my intuition tells me will become the medicine of the future.
Mm. Well, I'm excited. And we're also going to have two of John's close collaborators, Anders and Kachina, that'll add some very deep experiential elements to today. And we're going to have a lot of great information. And I also want to let everyone know that we have an opportunity to go deeper with John in his groundbreaking course. It's called Secrets of Cymatics and Sonic Science, Natural Healing with Frequency Medicine. So we'll share more about that towards the end of the hour if you want to go further. So, John, I'd love to begin our time today with a little bit about your journey into the frontiers of sound healing and the science of that, and particularly focusing on why opening the pineal gland is so important to unlocking this healing potential.
I'd be delighted to, Stephen. Thank you. Well, looking back on my life about 30 years ago, I can see now that there were three life-changing moments that really set me on this current path to discover sound's healing qualities. The first was in the mid 1990s, and I had a week-long rebirthing workshop with Jill Peirce. I think probably some of you know that Jill is the wife of Rupert Sheldrake, the famous scientist. Anyway, in this rebirthing workshop, I experienced, well, floods of tears, resulting in my heart opening and becoming, I believe at any rate, a whole person, not merely a kind of left-brained engineer as I was then before that life-changing workshop. I became spiritually awakened John Stuart Reid. That's how I really feel about it. And yet I'm still retaining my scientific acuity, despite the fact that I'm a kind of left and right brain person now. So this expanded version, you could say, of myself began to transition to become a scientist, which, by the way, even as a young man, I had always wanted to be a scientist, but I was taken on a different path into engineering, and I certainly don't regret that. But anyway, one of the things that I wanted to investigate was the ancient Egyptian preoccupation with rebirth. Having had that amazing experience with Jill Peirce, I became really interested in the Egyptian perspective of rebirth. And I soon came across a quote by a Greek traveler named Demetrius, who said, in Egypt, when priests sing hymns to the gods, they sing the seven vowels in due succession. And the seven vowels have such euphony that men listen to it instead of the flute and the lyre. And this got me really excited, Stephen, because I realized that the ancient Egyptians were not merely using words in their rituals, but actual sounds. And I was fascinated to learn more about Egyptian rebirth. So I visited the Great Pyramid in early 1996 with my father, and I did something perhaps a little bit naughty, but I really had always wanted to do it, which was to lie in the sarcophagus. I think you've probably heard this story before, how, when I made sound in the sarcophagus, in order to ascertain its kind of resonant properties, my body, every cell in my body seemed to tingle and goosebumps broke out all over my flesh. And I became absolutely fascinated to learn more about the qualities of this sarcophagus. So later, cutting this very short, later in 1996, I actually went back to the pyramid armed with a whole, well, an armory of acoustics instrumentation, conducted experiments with the sarcophagus. And one of the experiments, which was amazing and related to birth and rebirth, was that the whole sarcophagus began to beat like a heart, literally boom, boom, boom. And this was the antiquities inspector, I think, was a little bit shocked, as I was actually. I didn't expect it to do anything like that. But anyway, that took me on a path of investigation, which resulted ultimately me in going back again in 1997, this time to conduct a series of cymatics experiments to understand more about the resonances in this granite box, this 3.7-ton rose granite box. And that particular series of experiments in 97 was really a huge game changer for me. And one of the reasons was that my lower back had been seemingly miraculously healed during that cymatics experiment. You know, about 3 weeks before going out to Egypt, I injured my lower back, and I was really upset with myself for doing it because I did something really silly. You know how if you bend down at an angle and try to lift something at an angle, it can really damage your back. And I did that. It was silly. I was tired that day. But it turned out to be a great gift because having been miraculously or seemingly miraculously healed during that experiment, by the way, within only 20 minutes of making sound in the King's Chamber, all of the pain in my lower back left me and it never came back.
Hmm.
So that is really what I wanted to learn, exactly how had that healing occurred, because I actually sensed that it could become a new tool not only for myself, but for humanity as a whole. And so that's the path that I've been on ever since, Stephen.
Amazing path, and thank you for dedicating yourself to this field. And I know you've had so many discoveries that we'd love to explore in more depth, and I know there's a lot in your upcoming course, but let's focus particularly on what you want to share today about the pineal gland and understanding how sound can help open that. So I know you've prepared a very detailed presentation because there's a lot of information and science behind this that will lead into experiential. So I'll just kind of give you the floor and let's walk us through that whole understanding.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. So I think I'll just go ahead and share my screen. So I'd like to begin just talking a little bit about the spiritual and the physiological aspects of the pineal gland and how I came to understand, thanks to the second law of cymatics, which I'll mention in a moment or two, that it can be activated by the musical note E3 and indeed by one's own vocal sound bubble. First of all, a few facts about the pineal gland. It's part of the endocrine system, of course, and it is tiny and it's shaped like a pine cone and located near the termination of the optic nerves. And that's a very important point, which you'll understand in a moment or two. So this important gland regulates vital body functions by secreting and controlling hormones. I think it's common knowledge that it monitors circadian rhythms, the body's natural physical and mental rhythms, and it plays important physiological and spirituality roles. It was the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes who regarded the pineal gland as being the principal seat of the soul, and of course also the founder of Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, supported that view, and she argued that the pineal gland is that which the Eastern occultist call the divine eye or the third eye, and she believed that it is the foremost organ of spirituality in the human brain. And in Hinduism, the third eye is considered a spiritual center representing inner wisdom, enlightenment, and the ability to see beyond the physical world, and it's often symbolized by the tilaka, this red dot that I'm sure that you've all seen placed on the forehead. Here's a few more facts about the pineal gland. I think it's common knowledge again that melatonin is one of the principal hormones that's secreted by the pineal gland. It secretes it throughout the day, of course, but in much higher amounts during darkness. and it signals the body to prepare for sleep, which is probably one of the reasons why we feel sleepy at the end of the day. However, the pineal gland can also sense the presence of a fresh tumor in the body, and this is very, very, very important element of how the body can actually, or always does actually, sense tumors, but sometimes not sufficient power to be able to eradicate the tumor. Anyway, the melatonin actually stimulates the defense processes in the body, which are constantly seeing off rogue cells, as I say, sometimes, unfortunately, with not sufficient efficiency. But at this stage of cancer development, melatonin can exert powerful tumor inhibitory activity. There's also another secretion, this DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is another hormone, and this particular hormone has been dubbed the spirit molecule, and when it flows in our brain, it definitely enhances our ability to connect with spirit. And then also, I think, again, fairly commonly known that the pineal gland secretes small amounts of serotonin, and along with dopamine is often known as the happy hormone because it regulates mood. Optimal activation of the pineal gland also slows the rate at which we age, which I think everyone wants to do that, wants to be younger and so on. So it's a very important aspect of the pineal gland, and understanding how to activate it is, of course, important to us all. And Anders is soon going to guide us in a simple exercise to activate our pineal gland. But first, let's explore briefly the science. Really concerns the second law of cymatics and how it plays out when sound enters our eyes. I was actually very privileged to give a presentation at the Water Conference in October last year to a large audience of scientists concerning the laws of cymatics, or I should really say the postulated laws of cymatics, of course, because they do have to be proven by other scientists. But as the red arrow shows, if you look to the right-hand side there, you'll see an actual photograph of a pineal gland. And amazingly, it actually does look like a pine cone because it has these spiral layers of cells on the surface. And in my new course, I'm going to discuss the 4 laws of cymatics and how they play out in our biology. But for now, the second law states this: a fluid membrane compresses incident sonic periodicities in a ratio governed by the relative densities of the sonic and fluid mediums. It's a bit of a mouthful, but you know, it's really actually very simple to explain. So in the case of sound in air and water, this ratio is 829 to 1. In other words, the molecules in the water are 829 times closer together than the molecules in the air. And therefore, this simple fact means that when sound enters into our eyes, the wavelengths are automatically compressed in this ratio. And we can easily calculate the musical note for optimal pineal gland activation, again, using that ratio. In this case, what we do is look at the smallest dimension of the pineal gland, which is about 2.5 millimeters, about 1/8 of an inch roughly. And then we expand that, we multiply it by 829, and we end up with a wavelength of 2072 millimeters. And then if we look that up on a musical scale, we find it's a frequency of 164.814 hertz. In other words, a musical note E3. And there, by the way, at the bottom, for those that are interested in this science aspect, given the actual figures for pure water at 20 degrees C, and there's the actual density of pure water versus the density of air at sea level. Now I'd like to hand over to Anders Holt, who will guide us in a sonic activation of the pineal gland. Hello, Anders, and hello, Katrina.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, John. I would love to. I would love to also invite all of you to do a little what we call a toning with me. on the very pitch that John is talking about. In case some of you are wondering what is toning at all, well, toning is you basically using your voice to create sound one tone at a time. And there's nothing that your brain needs to understand. It's basically one breath and one tone at a time. So it's not something where you need to be a singer or anything. Anyone can make one tone. And that means that anyone can do toning successfully. So toning is a personal thing. It's not about performance at all. So you could say that toning is using your voice for deeper inner clarity and balance. And it's really for everyone. So you breathe in deeply and you exhale on sound. Breathing in deeply and exhaling on sound. That's what it is. Simple yet powerful. And in addition to these aspects, this particular toning that I would love to do with you now is indeed also, like John said, it's a vocal exercise to create a sonic activation of the pineal gland. That's really what it is. And it's done because we're going to do it on the note, on the tone E3, which is a particular frequency, particular note. So, and this exercise then, it helps to unlock heightened awareness and perception, as well as it supports you in your profound connection to your intuition, to your personal, as I said, your inner harmony and balance. So you can do this exercise with open eyes or with closed eyes. I tend to do it with closed eyes, but as you please. So yeah, let's do this together. If you start, yeah. All right, so here we go.
Thank you,
Okay, well
Anders. That's
done.
very beautiful. Before I go back to screen sharing, I'd just like to mention the aspect of sound as a wave is a misnomer. Those of you who have not taken one of my previous Shift Network courses will probably not know that fact. But sound indeed is not a wave. Sound is bubble-like. All audible sounds are actually spherical or spheroidal, let's say. They're certainly what I term sound bubbles. And so as Anders was making those beautiful sounds, and with Kachina's lovely backing with the keyboards there, they were creating sound bubbles, which were, if you were using a desktop computer or any kind of device that has sound output apart from headphones, I should say, if it's actually coming out into the room, I mean, then what was literally emitting from the speaker, from the transducer, were sound bubbles. And these sound bubbles were entering into your eyes, regardless of whether your eyes were open or closed. You know, the eyelids are actually made mainly of water. And of course, sound propagates really beautifully through water. So now think about those sound bubbles, which were coming from Anders and Kachina's beautiful music there, entering directly into your eyes and traveling straight through the water in your eyes to the retinas in your eyes, which, by the way, are both, again, mainly made of water. They're kind of liquid crystal. And then the sound goes through the optic nerves, which, again, are mainly liquid crystal, finally reaching the pineal gland, which is immersed in its own little bath of water. So now, because of that calculation that I did based on the second law of cymatics, that particular musical note, E3, beautifully stimulates the pineal gland. Some of you may have experienced light. You might have seen some light being created in your mind's eye. That's perfectly normal. But one thing's for sure, you did really have a wonderful activation of your third eye there, your pineal gland. Now I'd like to go back to screen sharing, and we'll meet Anders and Kachina again later, a little bit later in this presentation. I'd like to move on now to experiments that I conducted to test Pythagoras's belief that music can be used in the place of medicine. And these are experiments that I conducted in collaboration with Professor Sung-Chul Ji of Rutgers University. And there you see Professor Ji and myself in the Cymoscope lab. We worked for several days together to design this particular series of experiments involving human blood. And by the way, this series of experiments had actually come to me lying in bed one day, just as I was waking. I seem to get most of my really great ideas at that point, just at the point, but when I'm not fully awake, I'm just coming out of sleep. And it concerns how music gives us new red blood cells for old. Of course, when I conceived of the experiments, I didn't know this fact that music does indeed give us new red blood cells for old, but it turned out to be exactly that. So I was following my intuition, which of course is very powerful in everyone. And whenever I do follow my intuition, usually turns out to be something very good. In this case, the process begins by warming whole blood to 37 degrees, normal blood temperature, and then decanting it into two smaller tubes. One test tube is placed in an incubator containing a speaker, as you see here, and we can of course play music into that speaker. And this is based on a protocol, by the way, of 20 minutes, which was the concept of Professor G. This is the amount of time that it takes for, a minimum amount of time that it takes for a biological effect to occur. The other test tube, which is the control experiment, that's placed in what we call a dry bath incubator in the Faraday cage of the lab, which is an electromagnetically screened chamber, small room basically, that's very, very quiet, sound pressure level about 25 dBA for those who understand those units, but let me just say that it's a very quiet sound pressure level. And then we do a test of the red blood cell count. So we test the blood from the quiet control environment, and then we compare it with the musical environment blood. And what we saw was a significant increase in the viability of the red blood cells that had been immersed in the music. typically sort of 15 to 18% increase within only 20 minutes of immersion in the music. And this was an astonishing result. Of course, we were very happy. We didn't understand why at that time, why we were seeing this result, but we were very, very happy to see it. The most surprising aspect of this, though, was that popular music, every time we tried popular music, it outshone the results for classical music. And this puzzled us greatly initially but we soon realized that it was actually the low frequency content of popular music, in other words, the bass beat, that was powering the regeneration of old red blood cells, effectively making them new again. It kind of reminds me of the story of the genie and the lamp, new lamps for old. Anyway, the low frequencies enhanced the ability of the hemoglobin molecules in the red blood cells to absorb more oxygen. And there you see a photo of the actual automatic blood cell counter, which is the means by which we can count the number of viable red blood cells. Viability, by the way, is the ratio of living red blood cells to dead red blood cells. And so this was a really interesting result, a fascinating result, and one that we were extremely excited to see. And it turns out that the bass beat of popular music is actually mimicking the sound of heartbeats, causing more oxygen to be made available for the repair of proteins. So in red blood cells, when we receive them from the blood bank in a blood bag, literally, and then decant them into test tubes, what we find is that there are always millions of healthy, viable red blood cells, many millions that are already dead, even though the blood was taken from a person only the day before, and then many millions more that are in a kind of transitory stage between living and dying. In other words, they're on their way out. The outer membranes of the red blood cells, these old red blood cells, are starting to lose their integrity, and ultimately they will die in the in vivo environment in the body and be mopped up and so on, be replaced. But what we were finding was that literally within 20 minutes of immersion in music, those old red blood cells were being made young again, being literally made viable again. And this is a really fabulous result. So it turns out that the heart has, well, we know the heart has many roles in the body. The primary role, of course, is to circulate the blood. But it turns out that there's a very important secondary role, which is to create low frequency sound. These are literally the sound of your heartbeats that cause more oxygen to be bound with every single heartbeat. One of the most important experiments, we used the cymoscope instrument to make visible the voice of Anders' gorgeous deep voice on the surface of human blood, resulting in what we think of here as an historic image. And almost certainly this will go down in history of hematology for sure. On the left there you see literally a beautiful pentagonal image imprinted by Anders' voice onto the surface of the blood. But then the great surprise was when we stopped Anders' voice, literally by bringing the slider on the mixer down, the imprint of his voice stayed on the surface of the blood. There you see an enhanced contrast version on the right hand side there. And this is simply because the high pressure in Anders' voice literally caused more oxygen to be bound to the hemoglobin, turning the dark red blood into bright scarlet. And there you see the result, that beautiful pentagonal image. I'd now like to introduce the subject of audio heterodyning. This is a phenomenon that some people have recently started calling the Reid heterodyne phenomenon. And certainly it was me that discovered it. And after all of these years, initially 30 years virtually of being an acoustics engineer, and then another 25 years being an acoustic scientist, I had not come across this phenomenon. It's astonishing. But anyway, it is a new phenomenon in audio. And what it is, it concerns the fact that certain albums of music contain or have the ability to produce, let's say, very low frequencies. And, you know, there's a lot of great science now showing that optimal vagus nerve stimulation can result in many different huge health benefits, including mitigating chronic inflammation, for example, which there is no mainstream cure for. If someone has chronic inflammation, there's nothing really much in the medical toolkit, if you like, that can mitigate it. And yet many researchers have found in medical physics that optimal vagus nerve stimulation can indeed achieve that result. And what I saw this particular day when I made this discovery was simply that showing Anders and Kachina's beautiful music, The Dream of the Blue Whale, on the lab spectrum analyzer, I was seeing energy, a lot of energy in the very extremely low frequency band. There you see me pointing at the 12 hertz band of the analyzer, and a lot of energy in that area, and also even all of the bands just above it. So what this means is that the CD in this case of The Dream of the Blue Whale does not contain these actual frequencies. These frequencies are created in real time as the CD plays, or if it was a digital media player, it would be the same thing. As the music plays, these very, very low frequencies are automatically generated. But the very strange thing is, not with every album, only with certain albums. And this is part of the mystery that I have yet to discover. But many studies, as I mentioned, have shown powerful anti-inflammatory effects of extremely low frequencies on the vagus nerve system. And here's one of many papers that I will be sharing in the course. And these are very important pieces of research. From this discovery, I have now created a list, a healing music list of that creates copious amounts of heterodyne frequencies. And I have 3 pages so far of these albums. Here's page 1 of 3, and I'll share the other 2 pages, of course, in the course. But you can see straight away that we have Dream of the Blue Whale right at the top of the list, because that was the music that allowed me basically to make this discovery. But all these other beautiful albums all generate copious amounts of this very healing energy. Now, the key to all of this, though, is that it must be experienced through headphones, not through speakers this time, but through really high quality headphones. Otherwise, you will not experience the very low frequencies that are needed for optimal vagus nerve stimulation. Just a few more facts about the vagus nerve. It represents the main component of the parasympathetic nervous system, which oversees a vast array of crucial bodily functions, including control of mood, immune response, heart rate, digestive system, and, of course, it can be supported by auricular input, in other words, through the ears. And this beautiful drawing that you see on the right-hand side here, looking a little bit like a kind of a train map, you know, where you find your next station kind of thing. But basically it is showing that when the vagus nerve leaves the brainstem, it first branches off, called the auricular branch, branches off to the 2 ears, and then it goes to the pharynx and the larynx. Well, this is really good news, because it means that the vagus nerve can be easily stimulated through the ears, and also, of course, by our own voice frequencies. And then, of course, the vagus nerve carries on to link with all of the other major organs in the body. It innervates, in other words, all of the major organs. And many studies have shown that if we optimally stimulate the vagus nerve, we can totally banish chronic inflammation, which is so important. In the course, I'm going to be showing some of the many wonderful things that can be achieved by optimal vagus nerve stimulation. And this is one of them, vagus nerves and cancer prognosis. Another one, which of course concerns us all, is vagus nerves and aging. I love that photograph, by the way. I think it's really funny. Another one, which is very important, particularly for sufferers of diabetes type 2, but perhaps even, it may help even for sufferers of diabetes type 1. And then, of course, also support for mental health, irritable bowel syndrome, addiction, and rheumatoid arthritis. All of these, by the way, these are all from actual medical studies that have been conducted, again, that I'll be sharing in the course. And then finally, the vagus nerves and sexual function. Again, optimal vagus nerve stimulation can support sexual function. And now I'd like to hand back to Anders and Katrina, who are going to provide us with a beautiful musical experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Yes, we would love to. We would love to do a little version, a short version, so to speak, of the piece that you used in these experiments that you just talked about. A short piece of Dream of the Blue Whale. All right.
Thank you so much, guys. That was absolutely glorious. And, you know, I know you know, and I'm just going to share with everyone now that Annalise and I very often listen to that beautiful music at our breakfast time because it just washes over us with such beauty and gentleness, and it's a really great start to the day. But I'd like to also just mention for everyone watching that my vision for Dream of the Blue Whale, and indeed for all of the albums that are so far on this list that I've created, basically involves, by the way, testing, literally individually testing a lot of different albums. And most of the albums that I test don't have this effect. And it's still a bit of a mystery, as I mentioned, as to how these heterodyne frequencies are only created by certain albums, but I will get to the bottom of that eventually. But my vision for this list ultimately is that I would like to see it in mainstream medicine, and I hope that I do indeed see that eventually happen. I think it will happen. And the way that a patient in a hospital environment would need to experience the music would be, first of all, via the headphones that I already mentioned, that you have to have really high quality headphones. Why? Because they only high quality headphones have the extremely low frequency response needed. The frequency response needs to be 5 hertz, around 5 hertz, in order to receive those really healing frequencies in the 5 to 10 hertz band. Excuse me. And then the other thing is that I would like to see the same patient receiving music through the bed of that they're literally lying on. In other words, there would be low frequency transducers in the bed, and the low frequency component of the music. Can you imagine Anders' beautiful voice and Kachina's beautiful keyboards coming up literally through the bed into the patient, and in this case causing far more oxygen to be bound to the hemoglobin molecules in that patient. You know, oxygen is the key healing molecule in the body. So if a patient has more oxygen, then the healing response of the body will be that much faster. So now imagine this scenario where the patient is receiving these beautiful sounds of music through high quality headphones while simultaneously receiving the very low frequencies coming up through the mattress directly into their body. And that's what I envision for the future, and I really believe it will eventually happen in mainstream. Thank you so much, guys. How does it feel to know that you were the prime mover in this discovery?
Well, I am, and we're both actually, we continue to be delighted and to be also a little bit surprised, because we are at the core, of course, we come as we are at our core musicians, and we are, and music is the way we interact with the world primarily. But the wonderful and the wondrous thing for us was when we after we got to know each other, that you really taught us that, well, listen, wait a minute, guys, let me show you something about your music from a completely different angle of the world that we have, frankly, up until that point, not really discovered or let alone known anything about. So it's delightful and wondrous. It's a journey, ongoing journey for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys, for your
Thank you.
beautiful presentation today, musical presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Well, what what an extraordinary tour of the frontiers and experience of the power of what you're saying, John. And yeah, so where do we go from here? What do you really see as sort of the next level of taking all of what you've discovered and applying it to really heal people in the world?
Well, you know, there are various ways that this can happen. I sense that I have been given a very important role in life. You know, that gift that I mentioned earlier about the injury to my lower spine, if that hadn't happened, I'm not sure that I would have been on this path that I'm on today. But the fact that I was given that gift, and then, of course, ultimately followed through to understand the biological mechanisms that had healed seemingly miraculously, but really it isn't a miracle. You know, we now understand the biology behind how my lower back was healed within 20 minutes. And now I see my role as sharing this knowledge with the world through the Shift Network, of course, courses, of course, but also by attending scientific conferences and general education of clinicians in particular, because obviously it's the clinicians ultimately who will embrace this new knowledge and hopefully eventually integrate it into mainstream. So that's the kind of dual pronged approach that I'm taking, sharing through the Shift Network, but also attending scientific conferences where I provide lectures on these important topics.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about your upcoming Shift course, because I know this is just really an incredible opportunity to experience the frontiers, the frontier science, the insights, and the specific personal applications for ourselves and potentially for clients as well. So we're very blessed that John has agreed to teach Secrets of Cymatics and Sonic Science, Natural Healing with Frequency Medicine. You can find it at the URL frequencymedicinecourse.com, frequencymedicinecourse.com. It is a 7-week program. There are no prerequisites. So it's really just if you are curious and want to learn more and want to explore further, want to take in this leading edge science and make it real in your life. So John, I'd love for you to share in your own words about some of your intentions for what people will come away with. And then let's go on a tour of the modules to give a preview of what's coming.
Well, you know, Stephen, you're aware, of course, that I've already taught a foundational course, but this particular foundational course goes much farther than the previous foundational course. New knowledge, of course, has come to light in the intervening years, a couple of years ago now, since I delivered that first foundational course. And my own knowledge has increased significantly in that time. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of new information in this course, particularly excited to be sharing in the field of quantum medicine, which many clinicians now believe is literally the future of medicine. So I'm really excited to have been given this opportunity by the Shift Network to share a lot of new knowledge. And, you know, regardless of whether you want to simply increase your own knowledge of this subject for the health of yourself and your loved ones, or whether you're thinking of it becoming a vocation, in either case, this particular course, this foundational course, will set you on a wonderful path to the future. So I'm really excited about it.
Module 1 is called Discover Cymatics in the Early Universe and in the Earth's Primordial Oceans to Transform Your Understanding of Life and Healing.
Well, in this important module, I'll show how cymatic principles shaped the universe and how they triggered life in the primordial oceans, which of course then leads us to understand that since sound was the organizing principle in the creation of life, we should not be surprised that sound can heal life.
Module 2 awakens cellular health and intuition by applying cymatic principles to the pineal gland.
Well, it's essential knowledge in learning that how sound catalyzes the body's natural healing response, remembering, of course, that only the body can heal itself, and to understand that the cymatic principles in biology, which this module, of course, provides and includes exploring the many ways that the pineal gland supports our body and our mind's ability to experience spirituality.
Module 3 harness bioelectricity to energize your body and enhance cellular health.
Yeah, since our body would not be alive literally without electricity, it's vital that we acquire knowledge on how the body generates this essential life force that powers all of our body and, of course, our brain. We'll also explore the rudiments of atomic theory in easy to understand language, which allows us to understand how sound gives birth to light, which of course is the medium in which all of our cells communicate.
Module 4 harness frequency medicine by sound and light to boost healing and cellular vitality.
Well, for many on a path to learn the principles of healing with sound and light, You'll find that Module 4 provides key knowledge of this subject, pioneered in the 1920s, for example, by Professor Erwin Schleiphaker, and today a burgeoning therapeutic modality which I believe is set to become an important tool in mainstream medicine.
Module 5, enhance well-being and resilience through healing by sonic vagal stimulation.
Well, Module 5 has a laser sharp focus on the vagus nerve system, which of course I've mentioned briefly today, but we go into it in great depth in Module 5. When optimally stimulated, it does have the power to support many chronic illnesses, including its ability to reverse chronic inflammation and the associated pain. And as I also briefly mentioned, improve cancer prognosis, help sufferers of type 2 diabetes, and may even support sufferers of type 1 diabetes, and many other health benefits are gained from optimal stimulation of the vagus nerve system.
Module 6, relieve pain naturally with sonic mediation.
This important module focuses entirely on pain, what it is and how it can be mediated by sound therapy, including nociceptive pain and neurogenic pain. And we'll focus on the bottom-up system and the top-down system and show that both systems offer wonderful relief of pain without resorting to analgesics. You know, painkiller medicines are very helpful for acute pain, but for chronic pain, analgesics can adversely affect many of the body's delicate systems. So sound therapy and music medicine are important alternatives.
Great. Then Module 7, activate quantum healing to support cellular regeneration and well-being.
Yeah, the foundations of quantum healing discussed in this last module provide important insights into how the body's healing response can be stimulated by biofield interactions and by the fascia system interactions with light and with sound, but also how our DNA can be reprogrammed by quantum medicine in the form of our consciousness. And it was my own darling wife, Annalise, who was healed of a medically incurable disease called scleroderma using the power of consciousness. So, you know, we have a wonderful person in Annalise to support us in that knowledge.
Well, what an extraordinary program. It is just so exciting to have you distill out all of the frontier science in a way that really makes it actionable and real for us. So again, the whole program is laid out in detail at frequencymedicinecourse.com. There's more detail on each of the modules. In addition to the 7 90-minute live sessions with John, you're going to have time to engage questions, Q&A with John. You'll get recordings of every session with video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts to work with, study, and highlight. There's weekly exercises for home. There's a Facebook community to support you and deepen your experience. And on the page, you'll see a number of extra bonuses that are designed to enhance your journey as well. John has done a video with Jonathan Goldman, another pioneer in the sound healing field. This is an interview between the two. Anything you want to share about that video?
Well, it's absolutely wonderful. Jonathan and I have been really dear friends for many, many years. One of the aspects that Jonathan has been really excited about for the future of sound therapy and music medicine is this ability for sound to literally regenerate old red blood cells. And he's been wanting a publication on this, you know, a peer-reviewed publication for many years. And now we are literally just on the cusp of sending that paper away for peer review. So we discuss a lot about the music effects on blood in that wonderful discussion.
There's also another PDF from John. It's the Therapeutic Power of Vocal Sound, an illuminating exploration of healing through voice. Anything you want to share about the PDF?
Well, yeah, that's actually, it's one of the articles that I've written that I'm really most proud of, because I think many people are completely unaware that they're walking around with this very powerful therapeutic tool, literally their own voice. They don't understand the principles by which that voice that they're carrying around with them can be used to support their own healing. So that article, which I'm very proud of, goes into some depth but in a very, again, easy to understand language about how the voice can be used to support healing.
Well, that's an exciting extra bonus as well. And there's one final one which connects with the Egyptian story that you shared, which to this day still always get chills when you talk about the work in the King's Chamber. This is called Egyptian Sonic Rebirth Rituals, a fascinating exploration by Professor John Stuart Reid. This is a PDF. You want to share more about what's in that special bonus that folks get if you sign up by midnight tonight?
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm really excited about this particular one as well because, that has been in the making, you could say, for many, many years. All the years, in fact, since 96 and 97, when I first conducted those experiments and started looking into the rebirth symbolism of the ancient Egyptians. And finally, after all these years, I've been able to find the time to actually write down all of the research that I conducted in relation to sonic rebirth rituals that the ancient Egyptians conducted. So yes, I'm really excited to finally be able to share that with everyone.
So cool. And that's the special bonus folks get if you sign up at midnight tonight Pacific time. So clearly this is going to be an amazing program. We always get rave reviews about John's courses as you're really right at the front leading edge of the science and makes it so exciting and applicable in your life. So you're really in great hands and you will get to some very practical insights and tools for your own evolution and transformation as well as applying with other clients if you work in any healing modalities. So we've kept the investment for this amazing program very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start April 3rd and run Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings and the transcripts in the community. Great testimonials all over the page from both students and the eminent teachers in the field. So many people love John, grateful to John, realize that this is the groundbreaking work that can help us birth a new medicine of the future and a new possibility to take what we all love is the healing, beautiful power of music and make it a real force for evolving our world in a very deep way. So John is really such a blessing for all of us. So if you choose to move forward, you're in really good hands, and you will also get that special bonus on the Egyptian sonic rebirth rituals if you sign up by midnight tonight. So John, what a great hour. Always a pleasure to be with you. Anything is still on your heart you want to share about your upcoming course? And for those who are considering joining you on the journey of secrets of cymatics and sonic science.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Well, first, just to say that I'm really delighted that Anders and Katrina are going to be able to join us again on this course. They're going to be present for 6 of the modules. But there's also another special guest that I have on one of the modules, which is Dr. Zulia Frost, who is an expert in phototherapy, light therapy, which again is an aspect of quantum medicine, of frequency medicine, that is becoming very important even in clinical settings these days. So I'm very excited to be able to talk with Zulia live on that particular module. And also just to say that, I really hope that many of you will be able to join me on this exciting journey into the future, because it does take many people. It's not just me sharing my knowledge with you from a perspective of the knowledge that you will gain, but I also know that if you do take part in the course, that you will then go and share that knowledge with your friends, with your family, and with many other people. So ultimately, it's a kind of burgeoning, of knowledge into the world, and I think it's a really important thing for us all to do in order to heal our world and to make our world a better place for our children and future generations. So I'm really excited by this opportunity. Thank you so much, Stephen, and all of you.
Well, thank you for sharing so much of your brilliance and wisdom and heart and your excitement really for this field. And I know that if people choose to join you for Secrets of Cymatics and Sonic Science, they're going to be totally blessed and turned on and healed in really magical ways moving forward. So again, it's all at frequencymedicinecourse.com, frequencymedicinecourse.com, and you get the special Egypt themed bonus when you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you so much, John. Thank you, Anders and Kachina. Many blessings to you all.
Many blessings.